throwaway for obvious reasons. So I, male, 23, just had the most awkward family dinner of my life, and I'm honestly not sure if I handled this right or if I just made everything worse. My girlfriend Sarah, female, 22, and I have been together for about 8 months. We're both in community college, and I work nights at a warehouse to pay for classes, so our schedules are pretty crazy, but we make it work. She's really great, and my family seemed to really like her when I first brought her around. My older brother Mike, male, 29, has always been, I guess, the favorite. Like when we were kids, he got bailed out of everything while I had to figure stuff out on my own. Okay, maybe I am a little bitter. He's married to Jessica, female, 28, and they have 2 kids. They're always struggling financially, even though both our parents help them out constantly. Anyway, about a month ago, Sarah started getting these weird texts from Mike. At first, it seemed innocent enough. Just stuff like, hey, how are you doing, and hope you're settling in well with the family. But then it started getting weirder. Like he'd text her really late at night, I'm talking like 11 p.m. or midnight, asking if she was doing okay and whether I was treating her right. Sarah's mom went through some really bad stuff when Sarah was younger, so Sarah learned to spot when adults cross lines. But I think because of that experience, she also gets paranoid about betrayal signs, you know? Like, she's good at recognizing inappropriate attention, but maybe too quick to believe evidence if someone shows her proof of cheating. So Tuesday night, Sarah was doing homework at my place when her phone buzzed with another text from Mike. She showed it to me because it felt off to her. This one was asking if she needed help studying and offering to come over and keep her company, since I had a night shift coming up later that week. I was like, dude, what? So I asked to see the other messages, and she let me scroll through. Turns out, this had been going on for weeks. Mike had been asking her for advice about anniversary gifts for Jessica, which seemed normal at first. But then it escalated to asking what girls really want, and whether she thought Jessica seemed happy in their marriage. He was using all this therapy language about communication and understanding needs to make the personal questions seem normal. The late night timing was what really got me though. Like, why are you texting my girlfriend at midnight asking if she's okay? And the study help offer when he knows I'm at work. Come on. I screenshotted everything and decided to bring it up at family dinner the next day. I know this might have been stupid, but I wanted to see how he'd react in front of everyone, especially Jessica. So yesterday, we all go to my parents' house for our weekly dinner. I brought Sarah with me, specifically because I wanted witnesses. About halfway through dinner, I'm like, hey Mike, Sarah showed me some of your texts, and we're both a little confused about what you meant by some of them. Mike immediately goes into this innocent act, saying he was just being welcoming and trying to be a good brother-in-law. But I pulled out my phone and started reading some of the messages out loud. The midnight, are you okay texts, the offers to come over when I'm working, the personal questions about marriage satisfaction. Mike got so defensive, started talking about how family members should look out for each other and how he was just being supportive. But here's the weird part. As soon as I started reading the texts, Jessica suddenly got up and said she needed to check on the kids and take them upstairs for baths. Except, the kids had already eaten and weren't even dirty, and she stayed upstairs for like 30 minutes while Mike got more and more defensive down here. My parents were just sitting there looking uncomfortable, and Mike kept claiming Jessica was just handling the bedtime routine, but she never came back to dinner. We could hear her moving around upstairs, but she didn't come back down until we were literally leaving. When we were putting on our coats, Jessica finally came downstairs and was super cold to Mike, like barely looked at him. She was normal with me and Sarah, but you could tell something was up. The whole ride home, Sarah was quiet, and finally said she was glad I brought it up because the texts had been making her uncomfortable, but she didn't want to cause problems with the family. She said Jessica's reaction made her think maybe this wasn't the first time Mike had done something like this. Now, I'm wondering if I should have just talked to Mike privately first instead of calling him out in front of everyone. My mom texted me this morning saying I embarrassed Mike unnecessarily and that he was just trying to be nice. But honestly, the timing and content of those messages was inappropriate, and I'm not sorry I called it out. I keep thinking about Jessica's reaction though. She definitely knew something was up the second I started reading those texts. and the way she avoided Mike for the rest of the night, like she's caught him doing shit like this before. Am I the idiot for bringing this up at family dinner instead of handling it privately? Edit. 1. To those asking if I've talked to Jessica directly, no, I haven't. She barely speaks to anyone outside the immediate family, and I don't want to put her in an awkward position. 2. Since people are asking about the specific texts, they weren't explicitly sexual, but the late-night timing plus asking about our relationship while offering to help when I'm not around felt like he was testing boundaries. 3. For those saying I should have just blocked him, Sarah didn't want to cause problems with the family by blocking him outright. And honestly, neither did I until I saw how many messages there actually were. Now, for the first update. First off, thanks to everyone who told me to watch out for more manipulation from my brother. You were absolutely right, and I wish I'd listened sooner. So it's been about 3 weeks since that family dinner disaster, and honestly, I thought things were maybe settling down. Mike hadn't texted Sarah anymore, and my parents seemed to be pretending the whole thing never happened, typical. Sarah and I were actually doing really good, and I was starting to think maybe we dodged whatever mess my brother was trying to start. Then, last Tuesday, I got this really strange call from my landlord. Let me give you some context first. My landlord, Mr. Chen, has always been pretty chill with us. Never had any issues. We always pay rent early, keep the place clean, you know. So when he called me sounding all worried and asking if everything was okay with my family situation, I had no idea what he was talking about. Turns out, someone claiming to be my brother had called him the week before, asking all these detailed questions about our lease. And I mean detailed, like how long we'd been there, what our rental payment history looked like, whether we seemed like tenants who might be looking to relocate soon. Mr. Chen said, whoever called kept asking about lease terms and tenant satisfaction, and whether there had been any issues with us as renters. I was like, what the hell? Why would Mike be calling our landlord at all, let alone asking questions that sound like he's trying to get us evicted or something? Mr. Chen seemed genuinely concerned and said he probably shouldn't have answered the questions, but the guy claimed to be family and sounded like he was just worried about us. I immediately called my mom, because honestly, what else was I supposed to do? At first, she said she didn't know anything about that, but when I mentioned Mr. Chen's exact quote about Mike asking if we were looking to relocate soon, her voice completely changed, like she went from confused to guilty. She asked if we could talk in person that night instead of over the phone. So I drive over to my parents' house after work, and my mom was obviously stressed and kept making tea that she doesn't drink. When I finally got her to sit down and explain what was going on, at first, she kept saying Mike was just curious about our living situation. But when I pressed her about why he would specifically ask the landlord about lease terms and complaint procedures, she finally broke down. Turns out, Mike's lease is ending in 2 months, and they literally cannot find anywhere else they can afford that's in the right school district. And apparently this matters because his daughter Emma has some kind of learning disability and needs to stay in this specific school program. The only other places they've found that they can actually afford are either in completely different districts or have like 6-month waiting lists. My mom admitted she helped Mike research our lease terms to see if there was any way to make our apartment available. She said it like she was helping us somehow, not like they were literally trying to figure out how to get us kicked out so they could take over our place. I honestly felt sick. Like this whole time, I thought Mike was just being a creep to Sarah. But really, he was trying to get our apartment. But wait, it gets worse. So this was Tuesday night. Thursday, I'm at work, and Sarah texts me around 9 p.m. asking if we can talk when I get home, because she needs to ask me about something important. I figured it was about the apartment situation, since I'd told her about the landlord call. So I was like, yeah, sure. When I got home around 6 a.m., Sarah asked me about some female coworkers and whether I'd been having late-night conversations with anyone from work. I was so confused. Like, yeah, I work with women, obviously, but what was she talking about? That's when she showed me these screenshots on her phone of text message conversations that were supposedly between me and some woman named Rachel. The messages were like, really inappropriate. Talking about meeting up after work, complaining about relationship problems, saying stuff like, I've been thinking about you and other shit that made me want to throw up. And the worst part was they included details about my actual work schedule and even mentioned stuff like how Sarah always studies at that coffee shop on campus Tuesdays and Thursdays. I kept telling Sarah these weren't real, that I'd never sent anything like that, but she had screenshots, and whoever made them knew way too much about my life for them to be totally random. That's when Sarah told me Mike had approached her at her coffee shop that afternoon. He'd told her he was concerned about my actions and thought she deserved to know what I was doing behind her back. He showed her the screenshots on his phone and gave her this whole speech about how he hated to be the one to tell her, but felt like it was his responsibility as family. I was like, Sarah, you know what my brother is like. You literally saw him get called out for inappropriate texting 3 weeks ago. But she said the messages included details only someone really close to me would know, like the fact that I'd been complaining about our upstairs neighbors being loud during the day when she's trying to sleep, or that I'd mentioned being stressed about our lease renewal coming up. All stuff that I probably mentioned to my family at some point, you know. But Sarah was already packing. She said she couldn't tell what was real anymore and needed space to figure things out. She's been staying with her mom since Friday morning and barely responding to my texts. I called Mike Friday morning, absolutely losing my shit, and he had the audacity to act all innocent. He said he was just looking out for her, and someone had to tell her the truth. When I accused him of making fake screenshots, he was like, why would I do that? My mom keeps calling, saying I need to give Mike the benefit of the doubt, and that maybe there's been some kind of misunderstanding. But what kind of misunderstanding results in my brother approaching my girlfriend with evidence of cheating while also researching how to get us evicted? I don't even know what to do anymore. Part of me wants to just move somewhere completely different and never talk to any of them again. But I can't afford to break our lease, and I'm worried that even if I could prove the screenshots were fake, Sarah's already decided she can't trust me. Has anyone dealt with family members actively sabotaging their relationships? Edit 1. To answer some questions. Yes, I've tried calling Sarah multiple times, but she's only responding with things like, I need time to think. Her mom has always been protective of her, and I'm worried she's convincing Sarah to just stay away from my whole family permanently. Edit 2. For those asking about the fake screenshots, I have no way to prove they're fake since Mike showed them to Sarah on his phone and didn't send them to her. I've looked into apps that can create fake text conversations, and there are definitely ways to do it. But without the actual files, I can't prove anything. The details about my life are what's making her believe them, even though she knows Mike was already being inappropriate. Now, for the second update. So, everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. And I mean literally everything. I know it's been like 8 months since my last post, and honestly, I thought that whole mess with my brother Mike was behind us. Sarah and I worked things out after a few really hard weeks. She ended up believing me about the fake screenshots once we sat down and really talked through the timeline. We moved to a different apartment complex across town, and I basically went low contact with most of my family except for like holiday texts. I figured Mike had given up on whatever weird manipulation thing he was trying to pull. Sarah's been doing really well in school, and I got promoted to supervisor at the warehouse, so we've actually been in a pretty good place. I mean, I was still pissed about everything that happened, but I thought the worst of it was over. Then 3 days ago, my dad started leaving me these really strange voicemails. The first one was Tuesday morning, and he sounded, I don't even know how to describe it, like panicked, but trying to hide it. He was asking if I'd talked to your grandfather recently about school stuff, and whether Grandpa had mentioned anything about paperwork or checking on things. Which was weird because my grandfather, my dad's dad, lives like 4 hours away, and we maybe talk once every few months. And when we do talk, it's usually just like, how's school going? How's work? That kind of thing. He's never mentioned anything about paperwork, but Dad left 2 more voicemails over the next 2 days, each one sounding more freaked out. By Thursday, he was asking if Grandpa had called me about tax stuff or verifying information, and whether I'd told him anything about our family situation lately. I was like, what the hell is going on? So yesterday, I decided to drive over to my parents' house after work to see what was wrong. And guys, the second I walked in, I knew something was seriously messed up. My dad was literally checking the locks on all the doors. like front door, back door, side door, to the garage, and I watched him do this 3 times in the first 20 minutes I was there. He'd check a lock, walk away, then 10 minutes later go back and check the same lock again. When I asked him about it, he was like, "Oh, just making sure everything's secure," but his hands were shaking. My mom was in the kitchen, and at first I thought she was just cleaning. But then I realized she was completely reorganizing all the cabinets. Like she'd taken everything out of the top shelf, rearranged it all, then an hour later, she was doing it again, but putting everything in totally different spots. Both of them looked like they hadn't slept in days. And every time I asked what was wrong, they'd exchange these terrified looks and change the subject. Finally, I was like, "Look, Dad keeps calling me about Grandpa and college stuff, and you both look like you're about to have nervous breakdowns. What is going on?" That's when my mom just broke down, like completely fell apart crying. She said Grandpa had stopped sending the education checks 3 weeks ago after some kind of misunderstanding, and they didn't know what to do. At first, they thought maybe the check was delayed or lost in the mail. But when Jessica found the evidence last week and left Mike, they realized the whole thing was about to come out, and that's when Dad started panicking. I was confused because what education checks? Grandpa never mentioned sending me money for school. I mean, he asks how college is going, but he's never offered to help pay for anything. So I called my grandfather right there from my parents' living room, and that's when I found out that for the past 2 years, he's been mailing $800 monthly checks directly to my parents' house, specifically marked for my name's college education. $800 a month for 2 years. That's over $19,000. I have never seen a single one of those checks. My grandfather explained that he'd been sending them to my parents' address because he figured it would be easier for family to handle the education expenses together. But 3 weeks ago, he called me directly to get some enrollment verification information for his tax paperwork. And when I had no idea what he was talking about, he realized something was wrong. I remember that call now. I thought Grandpa was just confused about something and didn't think much of it at the time. I'm sitting there on the phone with my grandfather, learning about thousands of dollars that were supposed to be for my education, while my parents are basically having panic attacks in the kitchen. When I got off the phone, I asked them where the checks went. At first, my dad tried to say there had been some kind of miscommunication about the money. But when I kept pushing, my mom finally admitted they'd been cashing the checks and using the money to help Mike and his family with rent and utilities. They forged my signature for 2 years. I literally couldn't breathe for a minute. Like I've been working night shifts and taking out student loans while my family has been stealing money that was specifically intended to pay for my school. But wait, it gets so much worse. Apparently, Mike's wife Jessica found out about all this last week when my mom had a minor kitchen accident and asked family members to help clean the house while my dad was at the hospital with Mom. Jessica volunteered to organize some paperwork and found a shoebox in one of the kitchen drawers full of my grandfather's checks. All of them marked "For my name's education," but signed in my handwriting, except it obviously wasn't actually my handwriting. Jessica confronted Mike that night, and he finally admitted that his parents had been using my college fund to subsidize their family expenses for 2 years. Their rent, utilities, groceries, all of it paid for with money my grandfather thought was going toward my education. Jessica packed up the kids and went to her sister's house that same night. She hasn't been back since. Now Mike is calling everyone in our extended family, claiming I destroyed his marriage over money and that I'm being vindictive and selfish. Apparently, he started this whole campaign right after Jessica left last week, trying to control the story before anyone could figure out what really happened. He's telling people Jessica is overreacting and that families should help each other out. But here's the thing that's really messing with my head. This means all that stuff that happened 8 months ago, the apartment situation, the fake screenshots, all the stuff with Sarah, it was all happening while Mike's family was getting money that was supposed to be mine. I keep thinking about how Mike acted back then and how the apartment thing happened right around the same time. I don't know if it's all connected, but the timing is really weird. My grandfather called me again this morning asking if I want him to get legal advice about the situation. I don't even know what to say. Like, yes, I'm furious about the money, but these are my parents, and my brother's kids are caught in the middle of this. but also $19,000. That would have covered most of my remaining tuition. I wouldn't need to work nights and could actually focus on school instead of being exhausted all the time. Sarah keeps asking if I'm okay, but honestly, I don't know. Like my entire family has been lying to me for years and stealing from me to fund my brother's life, while I've been struggling to pay for everything myself. Has anyone dealt with finding out your family has been systematically stealing from you? I don't even know if I should try to get the money back or just cut contact with all of them. I feel like I don't even know who these people are anymore.